Welcome to the Kolbecast, episode 313. Thank you for joining us. Today we are joined by three Kolbe academic advisors and veteran homeschool moms to get some advice on how to make a good start to homeschooling in general, and specifically homeschooling with Kolbe Academy. Kristin Pizzurro, Jennifer Thomas, and Elyse Williams have years of homeschooling experience and discuss everything from finding your homeschool space, preparing for a new year, to different ways to structure your day. All of this with an eye to making homeschooling fruitful for the whole family. Be sure to check out our show notes for all sorts of great resources. We hope that you'll enjoy the show.
Hi there, I'm Bonnie, Kolbe homeschooling mom of 4 lads and lasses, liturgical musician, popcorn, and podcast fanatic.
And this is Stephen, homeschooling father of 5 and director of development for Kolbe Academy.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Doing well. How are you doing today, Bonnie?
I'm doing all right. I was putting sheets on a bed just now. I pride myself on my quickness of changing sheets on a bed. It's like in the Cars movie, like a pit stop. So I'm a little bit winded, but I made it. So yeah, I'm doing all right. We are kicking off a series of conversations with the Kolbe family advisors, starting with some suggestions for the summer before the next, or maybe the first homeschooling year. Today, we've got 3 advisors who can speak from both personal and professional experience about preparing for a school year, even when it's a couple of months away, and especially when it's a couple of months away. Give us some lead time there. Back with us are Kristin Pizzurro, Jennifer Thomas, and Elyse Williams. Hello, ladies.
Hey.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, good to be here.
It's great to have you back. Each of these ladies has been on at least one Kolbecast before, so we're glad to welcome them back. We're going to reintroduce everyone, though, starting with Krysten. So, Krysten, tell us about yourself and your homeschooling cred.
Oh, boy. I am Kristin Pizzurro. I have been homeschooling for, my oldest is going to graduate with Kolbe this year, and we have done nothing but Kolbe. So kindergarten all the way through senior year. We have 5 kids total. My youngest is a kindergartner, so it's actually beautiful. We have one just starting her Kolbe journey and one ending it. And I just love it. And then I am 4 years as an advisor, and I love it. I love serving families and talking to them because every journey looks different. Every family is different, and it's my favorite.
Well, glad to get you in this conversation. You have lots to offer here. Jennifer, tell us about you and your homeschooling cred and all that.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Thomas. I've been working for Kolbe for 2 years now, but I've been homeschooling for going on 8 years, I'm pretty sure. They all kind of blur together now. I homeschool 4 kiddos this year, so it was a big change, but all the way from 7th grade down to kindergarten.
Good deal. Wow, it's that time goes. So I'm in a similar, like at the beginning when we set out, I would have been like, no, I know exactly where we are with the numbering. But now that we've hit this point, I'm like, I have to sit there and think about that for a minute. Yeah. Okay. Well, Elyse recently graduated her youngest student. Elyse, tell us about you and your family's homeschooling. Me and the word journey. So let's use the word
Sure
Odyssey.
thing.
Yeah.
Odyssey. Oh, that's excellent. Yes. Such a segue into the movie coming up in July, which my kids are really excited about. My name's Elyse Williams. I've been a Kolbe advisor now for 2 years. I've been with Kolbe since 2009 and have graduated all 4 of my children through the Kolbe program. Last one was May of 2025. So this is my first school year being quiet at home, which is a little different. So it's been a joy. I had a son get married last fall, and now I'm going to be a grandma in the summer. So I'm very excited about that. So yeah, I love serving Kolbe families here. I learn something new every day. Never the same day at work, any day of the week. So yeah, I enjoy it a lot.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Sorry, Stephen. You gonna say something?
It's just echoing those congratulations.
Thanks. It's exciting. Whole new chapter for my son and his wife. So we're very excited.
I'm hoping this conversation will help families who are both brand new to homeschooling, as in they haven't been through a school year yet, and those who are a few years in. I'm sure, though, that we will cover ground that will be helpful to families who have been homeschooling for any number of years And to that end, we'd also love to get suggestions from listeners who've been there, done that, or are there and doing that now. So feel free to comment on the social media posts for this episode or send an email to podcast@kolbe.org. That's KOLBE.org. So drop us a line and add your thoughts to this conversation. We're very interested to hear them. All right. So, ladies, when you get matched up with a new family and have gotten through the first few steps in the process to the point where they are intent on homeschooling the next school year, so we're past that sort of inquiry, like they're doing it. What guidance do you typically give them at the beginning of either summer break or a few months out from starting the day-to-day schoolwork?
Yeah, sometimes if they have expressed that they are brand new and they would love to chat with me about how to homeschool, I usually set up a phone call, just so we can walk through different options for what day to day might look like, to prepare them. It's hard. I always tell families, for as many different families that we have, that's how many different ways there are to homeschool. Like there's no, just because what I do works for me doesn't mean that it will necessarily work for you. I have different children than you have, different ages, different curriculum, not curriculum, but like different subjects, different textbooks, those kinds of things. Even if you're using Kolbe, it helps to kind of start from scratch and get info about the family, just to say, hey, tell me where you're at. Tell me what led you here. Have you been in public school? Have you been in a parochial school up until now? What made you change your mind? Or are we starting with the oldest is finally in kindergarten and you've always wanted to homeschool? And what does this look like? So I always like to start there, just getting to know the family. I'm working on being a better listener and making sure that I'm listening and taking in before giving any kind of advice.
Yeah, I usually start by asking what homeschool is going to look like for that family. Do they have meetings throughout the day that they've got to plan? Are they going to school 5 days a week? What does that look like? Some families even school at night. So I like to just get a feel of what it's going to look like for them because, again, every homeschool family homeschools a little bit differently than others. So it just helps to have that little bit of information so you can better advise them.
That's a great point, Jennifer. I advise a lot of families with high school students. So they're coming from other homeschool programs. They're coming from brick and mortar schools, other high schools. One of the things that I like to ask new to Kolbe families is, the question is, what's your goal for that student? So I'm talking about, I guess, high school students, what is your goal? What does it look like for them when they step out to the world after high school? What are the things that you're wanting to be in his or her mind, in his or her heart, and let that sort of guide you, backwards, sort of, okay, what do I have to do to get there? And so you'll notice all of us are saying sort of the same thing. We're all wanting to do an assessment of the family because, we're all made in the image and likeness of God and we're all unique. And so what works for one doesn't work for the other. So it's the concrete. What did you do last year? What are you doing? What do you think you might want to do next year? And then going from those conversations into more concrete, firm, steps to get there.
Elyse, you're absolutely right. Goals. I think that is a huge thing to talk to the family about. What are their individual goals? Because just because they're in the same family doesn't mean all the kids are going to have the same goals. So it's great to hear those.
Everybody's different, even from the same parents. Everybody's different.
Do you get many families these days that when you ask some of those questions, they say, I have no clue. We just had to pull our child out of the brick and mortar school and somebody told us about Kolbe. And so yes. What's next?
Yes, I actually had a family this year that started with Kolbe and they were thrilled to find Kolbe. They were in a high school and they Googled, classical curriculum, Catholic, and boom, Kolbe popped up. They did some research, they looked at it, and they're like, wow, this is what we want. And it's been a joy to help them do traditional homeschool format courses with Kolbe. And yeah, coming, looking for something, searching for something different. And praise Jesus that, Kolbe popped up on their internet Google search, and now they're off to the races. So
That's how we started homeschooling so many years ago. Was we were looking for something different. We didn't quite know what we were really looking for. And we Googled, Catholic homeschool, and here's Kolbe. And, it just turned out to be such a blessing. And so I like to share that with families, because a lot of my families do come to homeschooling, not really their first choice. And so they're just concerned, is this something that is achievable? Can I homeschool my kids? And so I think that's a very great question. What does it look like for them, and what can we do to help them out?
Yeah, because even the families who are coming in who are like, I pulled my kid Friday and they need to do something with them. And they have goals. It just might not be what, if you are like, I've always wanted to homeschool and I have these goals, their goals might be, I need to have something that's accredited that can go back to another school, next year. Maybe they pulled them halfway. I need to not have to teach every day. I can handle these subjects, but I can't do these. So it's still an assessment, but less of a like, I don't know. There's still overarching goals that everybody does have. So it's trying to understand, if I have a family who is stuck at the like, okay, now we're going to register for courses and I don't know what to do. And that's where those goals come in. Okay, well, tell me about your day. Well, I work from home. The other parent works out of the house. I need my student to be self-directed to be able to do this, this, and this, and I can teach this. And that kind of gives me a like roadmap of like, okay, here are some suggestions. Here's one way. Here's another way. If you don't like any of those ways, we can come up with something else. I I have met families who, when I turn it back to them to make decisions, they're like, no, just tell me what to do. And I'm like, I know, but I do need you to understand that Kolbe is very parent subsidiarity. So you get to decide what is best for your child. So if that means that, I suggest that you do a couple of online, maybe an asynchronous, and teach traditional homeschool the rest, and you're like, I don't like that. Guess what? You can change that. You can decide and you can do something different. And that's okay.
All right. So back in my day, there is a Kolbe welcome packet that I know families still get it. The format of it has changed over the years. It used to be a PDF, and now it's clickable links on the Kolbe website. But top of the list for starting off, there is like sort of a guide, a quick start guide, how to homeschool. Top of that is starting the day with prayer, and we can broaden that out to kind of approaching the school year with prayer, approaching this season of life with prayer.
Well, I think just as a priest would bless your home, especially if you had them out, for dinner or whatnot. Many times priests are so busy, they see your face when you're in mass, but they don't know a lot about your children. They don't know a lot about your family. And it's a wonderful way to help bridge the gap between, in their knowledge, meaning, you put a name with a face and say, hey, we're homeschoolers, and we want to have a blessing for our family for our new school year. Much like you would, catch a priest after mass and say, would you mind blessing us? It's our anniversary, or, our child is leaving to go on summer camp or something, whatever. First and foremost, with Kolbe, especially in the online classes, but even in the traditional homeschool format classes, every course plan says start your class day with a prayer. And so we're always wanting to bring our minds back to God, to allow him to grace us with the things that he needs to grace us with every day. And so that was the first thing that popped up in my mind, to receive an actual blessing and have that be a good, communication point where the priest is like, it's the Williams family, and we know they're homeschoolers, and if they have any kind of issues or something, we want to, a priest would like to, get to know his flock and get sheep, as our bishop in the diocese where I live says he wants to, get not dirty, but he's the shepherd, so he wants to smell his sheep. He wants to get in with the sheep. So, at any rate, so that's what I had in mind first and foremost with regards to prayer.
Yeah. I've shared this, I think, in a couple of other podcasts, and I know these two ladies know we start our day. I think it was probably about halfway through our homeschooling journey that I had read Sarah Mackenzie's From Rest, and we started doing a morning basket. It's morning time all the way through, so even the senior does it, but the idea is to start with prayer. So mine looks different than the one that's mentioned in the book, and I've seen, different. You could do it however you'd like. So when I had suggested, think about prayer, think about what you want your day to day to look like, and start each day with prayer, not just with each individual child, but as a family. So I call all of my kids to the table. We decide on a song per quarter, so we change it up. It's always Jesus music. That's what my kids call it. So we pick a different song. Usually they're upbeat, and I have I'm going to say it and hopefully it doesn't respond. I have an Alexa, and we call it, and it'll play the song, and they know they have to be sitting at the table by the time the song is over. And then we start prayer, and we have a set of rote prayers that we say all together, and then we read the readings for the day and the saint of the day. And then we have different things that we rotate through. But that way the schedule is always the same, but also it is a time to come together in community, right? So the smallest community that you have is your family, or the smallest church, right? Church begins at home. And so just being an example for that. And the little ones, the ones who still can't sit still, right? Like I have little ones that just dance around the table until they're ready, finally old enough to sit down and do the prayers with us. They're listening, they're taking it all in. So whether you have a toddler or a nursing baby and you've got a couple of olders, do the time, whether it's, at the beginning of your day, at lunchtime, find time in your day and plan that out ahead of time. So as you start to plan your year, think, okay, well, what do I want my days to look like? When do we want to start? When do we want to end? And how do I add prayer into that? And start with prayer rather than start with the subjects, if that makes sense. So put God first, and then the rest kind of does follow.
So I'm homeschooling 4 kids this year, and we don't all start at the same time, but we do usually start with a prayer. And then, you get them started on whatever schoolwork, and then I go to the next kid. I have some kiddos that are, might even still be asleep at this time of day. So we just kind of work on their schedule, and we don't really have a firm schedule each day with how we do things, but usually, breakfast and a prayer, and then we tackle the work.
Much more like that here, Jennifer, where people are kind of cycling through at various times, and we have people who really don't eat much in the way of breakfast and other people who do. And so fortunately my desk is down by the kitchen, so I just see them kind of traipsing in at different times, and it's yeah, usually try to make some sort of contact in the morning just to make sure that we all know we're still alive here. But yeah, it's kind of it's different every day, I think.
Mm-hmm. Similar here. It has changed over time as my kids have gotten older. I have 2 girls in high school at this point, and they take online classes. They do async and homeschool courses. So very much a varied schedule. When my boys were still in the mix and everybody was younger, we had a more consistent start time every day, and now with their varying schedules, it really is not that way so much anymore. So similar to yours, Stephen. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to family meetings. This is a family undertaking here. So this is a wonderful suggestion to have these family meetings. What do you envision there?
It might depend on the age of your children, especially if they're, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the oldest is the only one that you're homeschooling, it might be as quick as, talking after dinner and, approaching the subject, hey, we're going to be doing this next year. I want you to think about it, and we're going to take this back up here in a couple of days. Once you've thought about it, do you understand what it is? It depends on the age of the child, but as you have more children and as your children get into middle school and high school, they're definitely going to have their own opinions about certain issues. And as with any family, you have to reassess every year to see if that's the best fit for your family. And so if you have a family meeting maybe once a week, or however your family decides to do it, fears can be addressed, anxieties can be addressed, expectations can be addressed, hopes can be addressed for every person in the family, because this family machine, so to speak, only works when everyone is on board. And so success for each person in the family is going to look a little bit different. And so I say this as a person who didn't necessarily do it well when my kids were homeschooling, but I see now after I talk with them, I mean, my oldest has almost been out 10 years of high school already, so that's hard to believe. But, I see now maybe things that I could have done that would have helped transition us into the new year. I know that they always got excited when they saw the new books come in a huge big Kolbe box along with the course plans, because you were talking about welcome packet, Bonnie. I remember that welcome packet was in the little, it was in the folder with all the books and everything, and because there was nothing to download or PDFs or anything.
Right.
And
Yeah,
loved
they sent you
looking
the
at their
course
new
plans.
books.
I still have mine.
Yep.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Nicely bound
Yeah.
and everything. Yep.
Exactly. So I thought a family meeting to discuss things that maybe the parents were completely aware of, but in the context of a meeting where everybody has a cup of tea or everybody has their drink of choice and everybody has like a pen and paper, so that this looks sort of business-like. And I mean, kids can get excited about that sort of thing. So that's where that was coming from.
So, as a family, we usually sit down and we talk about who wants to start school at what time of day. And it's not like down to the hour. We kind of decide, like, are you going to be a morning schooler or are you going to be an afternoon type of kiddo? I have a daughter who is in second grade and she will sleep late every day and then she'll do her school in the early afternoon. And with homeschool, you're not spending hours and hours doing the work. So that works for her schedule. But then I have a son who's middle school age and he wants to get up at 8 o'clock and start it exactly at 8 and have his school done, before lunchtime. So we like to know how our day is going to fit together. There's only one of me, and I am homeschooling everybody, and we're also, working at Kolbe, and we have things we have to do around the house. So it helps to have that family meeting to kind of determine what your rough schedule is going to look like. You don't have to plan it down to the minute, but what will your average day look like? And of course, most days, things aren't going to go right. You're going to have to make that middle of the night emergency room visit sort of deal. And so that throws everything off. But just to kind of have a rough plan, I think it helps.
Happen at dinner time in our house oftentimes, because that's certainly the one time that everybody's in the room together. And so it'll be like my wife saying, "Oh, I've got a busy day, so if you want help with that assignment, you're going to have to catch me at this time." And so just to kind of make sure everybody's available, so it's not like knocking the door down of my to get to my wife for help all at the same time.
So we timed the dropping of this episode strategically. We have noticed that folks are looking for homeschooling info not right before school starts, although they are looking for it then, but even backing out a little bit, as we've made reference to this being a few months or weeks away from the start of a school year. So we're kind of coming at this like at the beginning of summer, so you can adapt the timeline to your own needs as appropriate. So what should families be doing now, the summer before starting homeschooling, starting with space?
I think space is such an important thing to figure out with homeschooling. So we're a military family and we move around so much that our homeschool space like changes and adapts to each house we go to. We just moved about a month ago, so our homeschool space is a little bit tricky right now. I have my son, he has his dedicated spaces in our kitchen at the dining room table, which works great for him because he doesn't need a whole lot of time with me. But in my office, that's where I'm going to homeschool my younger children. And then my daughter is fourth grade this year, and she's very, very independent. So she likes to homeschool in her room. She'll come to me if she has a question. But I think it's important to have those dedicated spaces where you know they're going to work. That's not saying that, my kids always stay in that same space. I have a daughter who'll go, climb on the climber to read her books, and that's perfectly fine. I think that's great. But having that one space where they know all of their stuff is located, they can find a pencil, they can find their school books, and they know like where to turn in their work they've done. Having those dedicated spaces, I think, really helps.
The book location, you just jumped in my mind because that's if you don't have a place where you're storing your books regularly, even though they might not always make it back to the right spot. But if you don't, then it always seemed like it was this start of the day is like, where's my books? And then you spend a half an hour searching the house for for the books before you can even get started. And then it's like, this just isn't working. We've got to at least know where our books and things are so we can get started.
Yeah. And our space has adapted over the years and as the ages of my kids changed. I have kids that really like to sit at the dining room table and do their work there and do it all together. And I have ones who that's too much commotion for them and they can't focus. And so they're in their room with constant check-ins because I don't know about anybody else, but children who go to their room in my house tend to get distracted by fun things in their room, even if I don't think it's fun. It's fine. I come in and things are being completely rearranged, and I'm like, this doesn't look like math. Huh.
But it looks great.
Yeah.
Yes. I like what you've done with the
Exactly.
place. Yes.
I know. Yes, exactly. So it's finding that space. And I, with 5 kids, we years and years ago, we started with milk crates and then moved on to IKEA Calyx. No, they're not paying me, but I just really love Calyx systems. And if I pull out everybody's books for the year, they almost always fit very neatly in one Calyx box so that all books return to their so if I get back to my dining room table and the table's full of books, I'm like, go put your books in your bin before the end of the day. Um, and that has cut down immensely on losing books for myself.
Something I think also that parents should think about if students have certain school zones where they do their school work, where would there be no school zones in your house? Meaning, this is strictly for relaxation. This is strictly for family time. Some people may have a home that works for that. Some people may not. And you can make your home what it needs to be. So think about no school zones. Think about, okay, part of this family meeting, maybe there needs to be guidelines about these particular spaces for each particular student so that other lovely students might not get into someone else's stuff. So that's something part of it could be a family meeting as well. I had a student that when he did his reading for Kolbe, in order to keep him focused in the way his brain worked, he would go to different spots in the house, and that kept him on task. He'd get 2 or 3 pages read here, and he'd get 2 or 3 pages read here. And if he went up to my husband's shop, he'd get 2 or 3 pages read up there. So we'd see him at various places all throughout the day, but we knew he was working on school because that's the way his brain worked. So don't be afraid to think outside the box to help your they don't have to sit at their desk all the time, or they don't have to sit at the dining room table all the time, but make it work for your student. And I remember I was exasperated because I was like, this guy, likes to hang off the chair while he's doing his schoolwork because he can't sit in his chair. So I'm like, well, why does he have to sit in his chair? Maybe we need a standing desk. Maybe he needs to get up and move around while he's reading, and that worked for him. So your space is what you make of it.
These are all great jumping off points and starting points that might not have been obvious to folks when they decided to start this. Yeah. Everybody was talking about books, which are a huge component of this whole operation. So let's focus in on the book component at this point.
So I always tell families, because what usually happens is the course registration is approved and then they go straight to the bookstore. But actually what I like to tell families to do is go to the course plans first. So go into your portal and find the course plans for any of the homeschool courses that you're doing. Open those, and on the first couple of pages, it tells you what are the required texts that you need and what are optionals. Because I get families, I often get big families, so 5, 6, 7 or more children. So I am very cognizant of cost when it comes to books and whether you're going to be able to use these for subsequent children. And so then we can kind of have a conversation about what teachers' manuals you might need, and things like that to then build your cart. And sometimes it is easier to find. Remember that your library is always a good resource for books to check there as well, for maybe literature books or things like that. So that's when I say the book conversation starts with course plans, for me anyway.
I think that's really true. So I like to have all of my Kolbe materials out on a shelf, which, kind of not always the best option when you have kiddos ranging from 7th grade all the way down to kindergarten. But I like to be able to see what I have so I can go through, because we do reuse a lot of the textbooks and things like that. So knowing what I have and then making a plan to see what is required. And then even going and letting the kiddos pick out, new pencils or a new folder for the school year. Even if they're not going to use it, like a 25-cent folder in their favorite color really helps them get ready for the school year. And I think that's great. I'll pay 25 cents for them to, be excited about starting the school year again.
Yep.
The Help Center on the Kolbe website has a section called Bookstore. And inside that bookstore, there are 2 articles in the Help Center. One is about the draft order and one is about monitoring your book credit, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I would highly recommend, if you're a full-time standard family or a full-time online family, take a look at those articles. But I love the way Krysten described it. Looking at the course plans, knowing the books that are in the course plans is a very, very helpful way to understand how to do this. The course catalog, finding the books from the course catalog is also a good way to do that as well. I would recommend not going straight to the bookstore on the website, because the platform only can handle so much information at one time. So it may not be accurate, which is why Kristen's recommendation of going to the course plan is the best place to go. And those course plans are in your portal.
I was just talking to somebody recently about our Nancy Nelson, who just retired this year. But so great loss for Kolbe to not having her help families. But she used to do a lot of that for families, where she would go through and say, "Yeah, I know you had another child last year, so you probably have this book there. So I took it off your draft order." Well, unfortunately, that's not always going to happen with our new automated draft orders. So it seems like if you've got one of those that you're using for books too, it's important to kind of go through and make sure there's not things you don't need and there, because that's probably what's likely more than something missing is going to be that there's more than what you need or things that you already have. And I think so. It's good to kind of take a once over or twice over on those, I think.
Yep, and order them early so that you can be familiar with them before you hand them to your kids. So we start our school year the first week of August. My kids do a mix of online and others. So everything that's not online, we start the first week of August. I do that for myself because I like to use the pool as a enticement to get our school day done to help us ease into the school year. So we start the first week of August when the pool is still open, and I can say, hey, if we can get this done, we can spend the afternoon at the pool. And it's worked for me for like 10 plus years. So use it if you'd like it, but don't use it if you are like, nope, it's freezing. I live in Alaska. We don't do outdoor pools. That's fine. No problem. And so I like to get my books in like June so that I am ready for the start in August. And I don't know, I'm like a child. When the box of books gets here, I'm like so excited and I start making piles and this is for this kid. And because I'm in my 13th year, I have very many books. And so I pull out my bins of books and I start pulling those and like making piles for every single kid. And, the older they get, the more dismayed they are at the larger pile. It's fine. And I tell them not to panic. I remember my 7th grader this year, I handed him his literature books and he goes, "What? All of these?" And I was like, "Yes, you can do it." So I like to do that. And then for me personally, course plans go with that. And I print off my course plans and I prepare a binder for each of my children. I like to make a cover sheet and I put it in the binder and I've got all of their course plans separated. And so that way I can keep track of grades, but also it helps me prepare like mentally. Okay, this is how we're going to step through the course and this is kind of what to expect each quarter.
That's a great point, Krysten. You and I must have been doing the same thing. We didn't even know each other back then. Each one of my kids had a binder, and inside the binder, there were 7 or 8 file folders, not file folders, but like separating folders. And so that's when I got to use my really great handy dandy, like, what's the tool that you can make like tabs and things with? It's some kind of,
This sounds magical. I'm not familiar with this thing.
It's
Like a
just
label
a
maker
labeler.
sort of thing?
Hello.
Okay.
Okay. It's labeler. So I would label
Oh.
all these different,
Like a
files.
P-touch?
Yeah, exactly. And you'd have math and history and science, and so depending on how they wanted their day to go, the first one was math, and I can remember Saxon math, and they would do their math first to get that out of the way, and then science, and then religion, and so it go down. So that way, if I was working with youngers, the olders are like, well, they just keep going to the next one and go to the next one and then go to the next one. So each one had a binder, just like your kids, Krysten. And then I had like a master 5th grade binder with all of the master keys and all that kind of stuff. And that was in a safe place for me, so that, at the end of the day, I could look over their assignments and say, hey, we could go over their assignments together. And so that was very helpful. With the binders and the course plans. I love that idea. Something parents might want to think about is, like Jennifer said, about getting the 25-cent file folder, folder that the kids excited about. Yeah, my kids love that too. And they like to pick out the color. So like science was going to be green and math was going to be red and something else was going to be yellow. So at a glance at your kid's desk,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they're working on science because it's green, and so that was a helpful thing, especially in organization too. Besides knowing where all your books are, where your spiral notebooks and your folders are too, and pen color too. It can all coordinate.
This year we did something different. I let the kids each pick out a trapper keeper, like the zip up kind.
Nice.
And they thought that
Yes.
was the coolest thing ever. And I can have like their whole week's worth of school in there. And if I'm busy doing something or helping another kiddo, they can move on to the next folder and see what else they can do without my help. So that's a wonderful idea too.
Yeah.
I think it's really one of the advantages of homeschooling in general, but especially I think with all of the things Kolbe has, this organization and getting this system in place. Not every child is like this, but I keep running across kids that, they do this year after year. And at some point it's just like, hey, you're kind of on autopilot right now. You know what to do, where to find your stuff, what you need to ask mom or dad about, and it's really, it's such an advantage to the spoon-fed situation of, the typical brick and mortar school where it's, here's what you have to learn now, here's what you have to do tomorrow. And it's just everything is so rigid and structured that they're not always, when they get off to college or whatever, students aren't always used to that sort of, okay, now nobody's looking over your shoulder telling you what you have to do today. Class is in 3 days and you better get this stuff done. At least some of my kids just seem better prepared for that than, and again, not every child is going to embrace that as much as the next, but it's an advantage to practice that as you're going through.
Yeah. That leads us nicely into talking about the couple of weeks before school begins. So thinking about time management is a great next step. So take us through that, just starting with there are some family non-negotiables to either identify or call to mind. So what might some of those be?
So we won't ever homeschool past like 4 o'clock. Usually, whenever um, my husband comes home from work, that is, we are done for the day. Adding an extra person into the household when you're already managing school, like that's when you've just got to stop. It's not usually productive. However, if the kids have a question, then, they can, of course, ask my husband that sort of thing after whenever he gets home. But we usually won't start school until at least 8 in the morning. I like to be fully awake and know what they're trying to get on to the computer for, or if they're trying to find a book. I like to be present and be able to help them. And, before 8 a.m., that's probably just not going to happen for
Yeah.
us. And then we always eat lunch. We're a big lunch family. So at 12 o'clock every day, they're going to stop whatever they're doing. We're going to sit at the table. We're going to eat lunch. And then we'll go back to schooling if they still have things left to do. But those are really the only times that we don't do stuff. We don't do any schoolwork on the weekends. We do school throughout the summer, though. So that's going to look different for a lot of families. And then, especially in the summer, we're going to attend more daily mass, things like that. So we'll adjust our days that time.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of what my non-negotiables are, and I think it looks different for every family. I loved all the different ones that Jennifer has. When my kids were younger and I didn't have them in online classes, Friday was always a field trip day. Like we were always out and about, and that was pretty non-negotiable for me. Like I wanted to get out of the house and have them put hands on the things we were learning. So I usually tried to tie it into science or history or something like that. And I live in a great place, a great area for that. I am big on like doing your best, and you'll know when your kids start homeschooling, like I don't need you to just get it done. I need you to give me your best effort. And so my kids, the very first time I remember, um, my kids get to about second, third grade, and I start handing work back to them that needs to either have a second go at it or we need to do corrections. And their face is like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, so remember when we talked about we got to put our best foot forward? And so, did you give me your best effort, or are we not sure we understand? Because those are two different things. So I always try to come at it in a collaborative, like, hey, it's okay if you're not sure you understand this concept and whatever, let's go over it again rather than you just winging it. But if you did know it and you just didn't care, then I care. Like that's a whole nother problem. Right. So one is a heart problem, one is a head problem. And the head problem requires me as a teacher to go back and find different ways to explain it. But a heart problem requires some deeper work and more discipling, right? Like, okay, well, what else was going on? So for me, a non-negotiable, and it's not a certain like letter grade. I don't know how to explain it. When I go through and I'm grading my children's work and I do it once a week, I can tell the difference between I just wrote something down versus I tried my best and I still am not sure this is the correct answer or whatever. So for me, that's non-negotiable effort versus just doing whatever you want.
Kristin, I would agree with you wholeheartedly there. I can remember going over with my kids their schoolwork. We did it every day at the end of the day before, while I was cooking dinner and while other kids were doing other things. I'd take one kid aside and work with them on things that they needed to, they didn't understand or they had a question and whatnot. And one of my students, right when we started, I don't know, a couple of weeks into homeschooling, he looked at me and he said, "We never did this in my other school," you know? I looked at him and I said, "Well, how else are you going to learn if you didn't necessarily know what you got incorrect?" And he's like, "Well, that's a great point." I mean, I probably said something not exactly like that because he was in third grade at the time, but yeah, it's the effort, it's the inconsistency, it's the learning the new concept and putting it into practice, and it's the little itty bitty, what you think are like minute days, but over time all of that adds up, and it adds up to a glorious, ending when your son or daughter graduates from high school and they have all of that in their brain. And so the little bit of it every day can just about drive you nuts and want you to pull your hair out and think, why am I doing this? But you are doing it, and it's the repetition, it's the beautiful way the traditional homeschool format and the religion classes, the online classes, they use the same books, and from first grade through eighth grade, the Faith Our Life series from Ignatius Press, and they have the same title names for every single chapter. I mean, every chapter name from first grade to eighth grade, but they go in depth even more every single year. And it's the repetition, and it's the little by little stuff. And that's why you're doing this. That's why you've decided to take on the homeschooling adventure, because you want that minute detail. You want that focus, whereas if they were somewhere else, they might not get that. So that is a non-negotiable. I love that you said that, Krysten. That's a great point.
Yeah, central to the whole reason we're doing this. Yeah.
Right. So for some, their non-negotiable might be mass every morning, breakfast every morning at a certain time, lunch every morning at a certain time, starting and finishing at certain times. But days aren't going to go exactly as planned. Well, how do you fit extracurriculars into that too? So there's a whole bunch of things to think about before you start your school year.
Another for me is extracurriculars don't happen if your work is not done for the day. So they have a checkoff list. They know exactly what needs to be done, and they have to show me. I have some children who actually have to prove it to me and bring me the books that they were supposed to work in and show me that they did it. Because we do have activities that they love to do, and so they don't get to do those if they're not done. The other thing is they don't get any electronics if their schoolwork is not done and they haven't done chores. So that's another non-negotiable. Sorry, I was
Those are
thinking
important.
broader, and then Elyse said breakfast and mass, and I was like, oh, I have those too. Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, I agree. We are a big video game type of family. The kiddos love Minecraft and whatever. And that is not touched until schoolwork is done, and not just completed, but mastered. They need to make sure that they are putting forth their best effort. And if not, like that is something that gets taken away, and that can be rough in the household, but I think it's important. And so it's great to have priorities about what you're focused on. I mean, some people might not be focused on their kiddos mastering school stuff. And so maybe they're more focused on an extracurricular. However, in our family, that doesn't work. And so we are very focused on the curriculum and making sure they're understanding what they're doing before we even participate in anything else.
Makes sense. As we're coming to this point, school has not yet started. We're still getting sort of our wits about us as we're approaching it. Let's talk a little bit about expectations around adjustment time to when school does start. When we're heading into that, we might have expectations like, oh, we'll be used to this in a week or 2 weeks or much longer than that. So say a bit about, what you all have experienced in your own families and what you see as advisors about that kind of adjusting to a new school year or semester.
Every school year is different.
Yeah.
So, we're in the middle of this school year and we just moved. So even this school year has changed so much in how we schedule our day. Um, and then we had an emergency last night and had to take kiddos to the hospital. So that affected, we're not doing schooling today because the kids were up super late. And so you just have to take into consideration that sometimes things are going to come up and you're going to have to change your schedule, and that's okay. Like that is perfectly fine. That is why you homeschool, because you're able to adapt to just life happening.
Yeah, I think you do your best to prepare, right? You prepare yourself first, right? Like prepare your mind, and then you're preparing your space, you prepare your books, you prepare your kids, right? Like so you have a plan, but always know in the back of your mind that God's plan is always greater. So it might be that you get disrupted by something, and that doesn't mean that all your planning is out the window and the whole school year is lost. It took me years to really internalize this. So if you're a new family listening, please know that one bad day, one bad week, one bad month does not mean you're not meant to homeschool. There are seasons, and you will float in and out of seasons, sometimes within a whole school year, sometimes a couple years at a time. Like, hang in there, continue to bring it back and lay it at the feet of Jesus, because he will either, console you and let you know, hey, it's okay. We're just in this season. And if for whatever reason there is another thing that you're supposed to be doing, that will be made clear too, right? Like, don't necessarily worry so much about days going perfect, because Pinterest and Instagram are liars. Okay. Listen, like, and you could be having a good day and it ends in tears, and that's okay too. Like, listen, there might be, we're having a good day, good day, good day. And then all of a sudden, something happens and 3 of your 5 children are crying, and you're like, well, it's okay. We made it this far. It's fine. And it just know also that that's what we're here for as advisors. If you're like having a hard season and you're like, I don't know if this is normal, reach us. Like, first of all, normal is not a thing. Everything is different for everybody. And so reach out, like just say, hey, we're really struggling, because it might be that you need to modify how you approach some subjects. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is more manageable. I can do that. We're going to ask these questions out loud for this subject. We're going to all sit down and read together for this subject, whatever it is. Anyway, reach out.
So important.
Right, I agree, Kristen. There's a fine line between challenging your students or breaking their spirits, and you as the parent know your children best. So, when you need possible solutions, when you need an ear to listen, that's what your advisors are here for. So please reach out to us by email, phone call. We're here to help. I know in high school, it took 6 to 8 weeks for each of my students to feel comfortable doing what they were doing. I know that sounds crazy, but it did, even into the second semester. I mean, they take their course, they would adjust, and then they'd be rocking until Christmas, and then New Year's would come and it'd be all over again. They'd have to readjust. So that's typical, and it's okay. So give yourself some grace.
Yeah. And even earlier, younger students too, especially at the beginning.
True.
Yeah. Folks have heard me say over and over, our first year homeschooling, I considered it a grace period. Like just give everybody some grace to get used to the whole situation. Yeah. Yep. Okay. This has all been fantastic, and there's more to come. I mentioned at the beginning of this that we've got this whole series planned. So we have episodes in the works. We're going to be focusing more on extracurriculars and also common stumbling blocks and so forth. So this is just the beginning of lots of wealth of info from the advisors that we're going to be getting from them to share with our families. And so we're going to leave it here for now and pick this up again here soon in another episode. I recommend folks check out our show notes. We've got links to lots of helpful information, including the Help Center articles that Elyse mentioned and relevant Kolbecast episodes that relate to this conversation. We'd love to hear from our listeners, their thoughts on this topic, what's been helpful to them, kind of what questions, both input, suggestions, and questions, so that we can work on all that together. So Krysten, Elyse, and Jennifer, it's been great seeing you all. Thank you so much for sharing all these pearls of wisdom, and come back soon and we'll pick it up again.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Subscribe to the Kolbecast on your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss an episode. And let us know how we're doing by leaving a rating or a review. And as always, feel free to email us at podcast@kolbe.org.
Mary, our Mother, pray for us. St. Maximilian Kolbe, St. Ignatius of Loyola, holy saints and angels, pray for us. Ad maiorem Dei gloriam.